Hello, world. This is Hello Chaos, the podcast about the ups and downs, highlights and low points of entrepreneurship, where we try to get real and try to get real information and some tips and guidance on how to get through the chaos and how to embrace the chaos. I am one of your hosts, Jennifer Oladipo, aka Jenno.
And I'm Jennifer Sutton, aka JJ. And today we have on our podcast is Jason Blumer with Blumer CPAs. Hi, Jason.
Hey, y'all.
Welcome.
Hey,
and I'm
Jenno
using
and JJ,
and I'm using
you.
your mug.
Yeah.
I know.
So
We're just talking. I use that studio for podcasting too. That's wild.
yes. So now you're on the other side.
Yeah.
I'm on the other side. Y'all, this is so surreal. So I'll try to be a good guest. I'll try my best.
So
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so Jason, you've got a few things going on, actually. So if you could tell us a little bit about Blumer CPAs, but also a big part of why we brought you here is because you are another one of these entrepreneurs who works to help support entrepreneurs in many aspects of their lives and business.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I love your show. Hello Chaos is Hello Jason, right? That's so I'm that entrepreneur that has brought a lot of chaos into our world. So I've been running the firm Blumer CPAs for about 20 years, and then Thrival, which is a community consultancy for other creative entrepreneurial accounting firm owners. So wow. Yeah. So that's really exciting. I know an accounting community to dive in to that. But in both spaces, one, we work with digital agencies and Blumer CPAs, and then in Thrival, we work with firm owners. So they're both service-based organizations. And so just for 20 years, we've been working with entrepreneurs that are running service-based organizations. And it's just a pretty chaotic life to lead. Entrepreneurship really has no chains or no boundaries or no barriers. And that actually is what hurts entrepreneurs. So we have been serving them for so long, of course, in the financial spaces, but my partner and I do a lot of coaching, a lot of consulting. It kind of gets into counseling, sometimes with partners, do a lot of that work too, and just helping them understand, the chaotic world they live in and helping to tame some of that. That's what we do.
Excellent.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we do I wear another hat. I run a marketing agency.
Yep, I know.
And I call our workshops when we're taking people through kind of the business strategy, marketing strategy, positioning. It's therapy. I was like, we're guidance counselors, we're coaches, but a lot of times we're therapists.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, being, doing that both on marketing and journalism sides for me, it's like so much of it is like just what's going on with the person in front of you. What do they really want or need right now? And that's how you get everything done.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we can just dive right into in terms of especially what's going on is it's great to have a money guy on the, on the podcast.
I'm a money guy. So.
You are. Yeah.
Because that's one of the biggest concerns that everybody has. And right now it's extra big, I would say.
With the economy
I guess.
Yeah. So what are you hearing? What are you hearing from your community? What are you telling your community? Just give us kind of that perspective.
Yeah, those are great questions. And our agency clients are asking us those things all the time. And especially just as it goes through the pandemic. And so, we saw the pandemic was pretty weird. The market was pretty weird. 2021, we saw a lot of our agencies rocket up, a lot of their profitability, their revenue. It shot through the roof. And when that happens in service-based companies, a lot of people respond with going out and hiring labor. So they respond sometimes reactively to go, okay, we're growing. I got to get some more team on board. And that's a typical response for agency owners. They throw bodies at revenue that's dumping into the company. And so right now in 2022, we're working with our agencies and we do a lot of financial advisory with them. And so the revenue is not rocketing up as fast, but their labor is significantly higher. And so that's starting to worry them. And so with our size agencies we work with, not only are they seeing a little bit of a slowdown in their revenue, which is freaking them out a little bit because they have these higher labor teams, but they're also, we help them monitor pipelines. So pipelines in the next 30, 60 days, they're seeing those be a little bit slower than normal. And it's, it's just weird to see those things happen. And of course, we're watching the Fed trying to control inflation. So they're starting to raise interest rates. So there's just really a little bit of fear in the marketplace right now for people. And people don't respond well. They don't purchase things. So I don't think we're officially in a recession right now. But people are worried about that. That's one thing they're really considering. So that's kind of, there's the people are feeling some weight and some fear as the Fed continues to raise interest rates, and they're applying some of their tools in a pretty rough way to try to control our economy. So
cool. So let's unpack a little bit of what you said, because that thing of throwing bodies at revenue, that is so common and so interesting. And we were just talking about, getting in people's heads. Why is that the instinct, and how effective is that? Or is that a good idea?
Yeah, it's not effective at all. So, I mean, as you can guess. So what we see is typically we want to see about a 20 to 25% growth rate for an agency year over year. And when we see something higher, it typically is a pace of revenue intake that's too fast for the team to mature fast enough to serve that much revenue. And so when revenue comes in a services-based organization, which is really the only kind of entrepreneurs we consult with, is ones that deliver services to a particular market. When there's, when revenue's dumping in, all they know to do is to go find people to do more design, do more website, do more developments. Okay. So they're trying to find people to fulfill the scope of this contract they just sold, or these 12 contracts they just sold, and their team just feels overloaded. And so what happens is, it's not that you don't need to hire people, but you can't hire people and train them and deploy software to help them, or to implement processes fast enough to mature at the same pace that revenue's coming in. And those have to match. So as revenue's going up, you have to have team that are trained with systems and processes that mature alongside at the same pace of the revenue intake. So sometimes we're like, you need to slow down the intake of your revenue, which is weird to tell an entrepreneur that. It's like, don't take in as much revenue. But what we're trying to do is build larger, safer,
scalable.
scalable, we call the word sustainable, which is you can be balanced and run an organization for a longer period of time. That sustainability takes a little bit of inhibition for the entrepreneur to not just take all the money in that they can. There's a choice you need to make with that revenue that you take in. So
but that's also hard, right? Because with service-based, there's a swing. It's not, it's not products. It's not projections that you can do only so far out there. So how do you, how do you have that conversation of, don't just feast when there's a feast, because a famine may come.
Well, there's a lot of ways, and entrepreneurs don't feel this, but there's a lot of ways to control revenue intake, right? We think, well, it's the revenue that's coming in. Well, no, everything in our businesses is controllable, right? That's how we cull the chaos, which is what you guys talk about. Revenue is one of the things we can control. So raising prices, there might be a sign that you're underpriced. You can push out the start dates and kickoffs of contracts into future dates. A lot of people are scared to do that. That's a scary thing to do. To tell a client, hey, it's great to meet you. We're intaking clients about 3 months out. Do you want to wait with us? And that's a scary thing, but it actually becomes a very strategic behavior. And they wait. You're right. They actually respond. I want to use you as an agency, so I'll wait on you.
But also, that's just the reality
control it.
Too, of a lot of people. I've tried to teach my team of, just because we have things in the pipeline doesn't mean we need to hire right then and there when we sent the contract. I'm like, it could be 90 days, it could be 6 months before they sign on. Let's not worry about hiring for work 6 months from now. Let's work on what's the pipeline, over the next 30 days. Is that that kind of what you're telling your folks? Okay.
So you don't just throw people at this, because a lot of times you start to hire quickly, you get a warm body, it might not be the right person, or you didn't take time, a hiring process should be 3 or 4 steps, right? Those should be pretty long processes. And if you're going fast, you'll start to skip steps. And boy, that's super bad when you do that. Because getting a person in your agency should take a pretty long time, because getting them out is really rough, firing people.
Yeah.
And that is just such a devastating thing to go through.
Yeah.
You got to go slow. So if your revenue's too fast, you'll tend to hire too quickly, is basically what they're doing. So
got it. And so now we are at a point where the revenue slowing. It's not a terrible situation, but it's slowing, and slow is scary. And so what kind of conversations then should founders be having at this point?
Yeah. Depending on their size.
Okay.
So a lot of times founding entrepreneurs, and founders are a particular problem. I'm a founder, which means they start companies, so they have this emotional tie to the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times,
that's who we focus on, is founder-led companies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, those people,
you're looking at one of them right here. So.
Yeah, well, JJ, they get in the way of the company, because it's weird. A company sometimes has to become its own thing.
Yeah.
And at some point, a founder has to take a role like a CEO and just do the CEO role, which means you got to stay in your lane just like everybody else. You can't do things like throw on an owner hat and trump people on a leadership team. Like, that's very hurtful things. It actually dismantles the organization. And those kind of things happen when the founder feels the weight, to do things. So if you're growing large enough, we'll help a founder understand, hey, you have a role now, right, that serves the company just like every other role. Yours happens to be the CEO. And so you probably want to CEOs start turning inward to the team to serve the team, while the team produces the revenue, generally in a services-based
Say that one more
organization.
time.
Yeah, that's big. So typically the founder is typically a creative technical person, right? That's often the founder of a creative agency. So they have to shed that role, that creative technical role, and become a CEO, which is often turning inward to lead a leadership team, to lead an overall team. While the team produces the revenue, leaders are not, and owners are ultimately not meant to produce the revenue over time when you're large enough. And that feels counterintuitive, but it's the way you have to grow a services organization.
Yeah, it's what we call, you need to shift from working in the business to working on the business.
That's it. That's that phrase.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the reason I asked you to repeat that is because the thing that I've heard so many times from founders is, and I think this is true for a long time in the business, but then at some point it shifts, is no one can sell this business as well as I can, meaning to customers.
Right, yeah.
I'm I know more than everybody because, it was my idea. It's my baby. I found it. I've done the stuff, and I'm more passionate than anybody on the team. Right. And then, but there comes a point where that may not be your role anymore.
Right. And you have to trust the team that you hire.
Yeah.
To lead and do their role. Right.
Yeah. And none of that's easy. So there's not a 12-step program to figure it out. So
there's not.
So you got to, you would know, JJ, right? You've been doing this, so there aren't no steps we can follow to figure this out. So it's very iterative. So you find that leading team becomes just very emotional and mental. Creative services entrepreneurship is very emotional and mental, because with every dollar you sell, it always comes with a relationship, right? There's a relationship tied to every dollar. So you're not just taking in a contract, you're taking in a contract of people you're going to work with, collaborate with, communicate efficiently with or not. They're going to show up to meetings or they're going to skip them. You're going to deal with a relationship. So, vetting the alignment of that client is what really builds healthy creative services entrepreneurial companies.
Yeah. So Jason, how did you, are you a CPA by background? Is that your background as a CPA? Yeah. And then how did you evolve into the building the Thrival community?
Yeah.
How did that evolve?
Yeah. Well, I started in college in a rock and roll band. So that's where I started. And my dad was an accountant. And halfway through, I needed to pick a major, so I picked accounting. So here we are, right? So I really, a lot of people are like, you might not be the normal CPA we meet. So I do have the background of being a CPA in the profession for 30 years, but I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So when I came to run the firm we run now with my dad, he started it 25 years ago.
Okay.
And so I came and led it 20 years ago. And then in the first 10 years, started playing around with consulting and entrepreneurial type endeavors. I was just very interested, started other companies that failed and didn't work. And so I would play around with things. And then like in 2008, I got on Twitter. And there were about 3 CPAs on Twitter. If you can imagine,
so you got to be a rock star after all.
Yeah.
That's right. Right. So it was just a few. And so I started asking them questions, and we would share thoughts about how to do it. And we would call each other on the phone. And I'm like, I actually need y'all to be my friend so you can help me know how to run my company. I don't know what I'm doing. And we a community kind of formed and just has grown out of that. So,
yeah, I actually heard about Jason some years ago, just in the course of like business reporting and stuff like that. And so then when I found out he was in Greenville, actually like down the hall from where I was working, because I was like, oh my gosh, I've like heard
this is the guy.
Yeah, so I would go to his workshops and things over there at Endeavor.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, whoa,
very cool.
He's here.
So where the name Thrival? Is it just to thrive, or is there another, background to that?
An old business partner of mine in a business he and I started that failed. He's like, let's don't be in survival mode. Let's be in thrival mode. So he made up this word, and I latched onto that word, and there was a URL available 15 years ago. I started just blogging on that URL, thrival.com, many 15 years ago. And then I formed a community. I'm like, well, why don't I just call it Thrival?
Yeah.
And of course, the way we spell it, everybody says it wrong because it's got an E in it. And so it's,
really?
Everybody they say trivial, but it's the word thrive.
Oh no, that sounds like trivial.
I know. Yeah. So it didn't totally work out the way I'd planned, but that's okay. So it's the word thrive and AL stuck on the end of it, .com, thrival.com. And that's our community that now does, curriculum. We write curriculum programs. We have conferences, we do webinars, and a lot of private related things for the community that joins too.
Yeah. So you've got a lot going on in your own, basically 2 businesses. I mean, just for you right now, what are you thinking about in this climate and decisions you're wanting to make?
As a founder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those tricky people.
Those tricky people. What's your 12-step program?
Yeah. I don't have one. So that's recognizing that. So, now my partner and I are in our 50s. So we've got a leadership team. And so we think about, what are older seasons of life look like, and what should we be doing? Because we've done a lot up to this point. So it's wild. And we've seen other older entrepreneurs do that. They start to really narrow a lot of what they commit to, so that you find in the older years in entrepreneurship that we've viewed and that I feel we're kind of walking into is that so much, but you have to really start to narrow and commit to only so many few things. So your no's, you start to say a lot more no's than yeses, because the yeses you get to say are pretty powerful, and they come with a lot of impact at a certain point. And so you get to just say a few yeses. Yeah. We're not really to that point yet, but we're kind of seeing some of those things come. So we have a pretty strong following. So we've been running a conference for 11 years. We've been podcasting, 2 podcasts of about 20 years combined. And so, running firms for 20 years, been in the profession for 30. And so we're kind of just narrowing a lot of what we're going to commit to, I think. But the companies we run we're still fully in the operation, so we can't step out of them. So we're thinking about who are those people, who are those leaders, that we lead with that would lead in more leadership roles. And we're not there yet. So those are things we're thinking how to do. And those are transitions we haven't done.
Right.
We've seen other
Right.
people do. And they're probably really tough to do and take years to pull off. So that's kind of what we're thinking about. We'll see how that goes. I don't know.
And where does the sort of short-term economic situation fit into that longer-term thinking and discussions that you're having?
That's a good question, Jenno.
Well, thank you.
You stumped him.
You stumped me.
Wait a minute.
I don't know. We're probably, it might not be the right mindset. We're probably in the mindset of just, one foot in front of the other, just kind of moving ahead. I think, thankfully, going into the pandemic, we had developed a pretty strong focus into the market. And so we're kind of known. People come to some conferences that we lead in the digital space. And so we still get leads pretty significantly. We get pretty large consulting leads that kind of can really support us, that challenge our team, to help us grow. And so we don't, things are probably slow just like for everybody, but we still have a pretty strong business that can probably span and get through any of that ups and downs. And my partner is really good about being very strategic about saving money, those kind of things that I sucked at really bad. Got myself into trouble, many, many years ago. And so she creates safer organizations.
Okay.
So I think we're gonna be okay as we learn and grow through this phase, because Julie, my partner, would think about things that would keep our organizations safe. And that's what people need to do. Growth in a market that has a layer of fear on top of it, which is kind of what we're in, which is really just the consumer, right? That's paying more for bread, eggs, and gas.
That's right.
We're going to respond with fear into a market. And so that works its way into entrepreneurship.
Right.
And so a lot of people need to be thinking about, how do you have a cash cushion, or, focusing a little bit on team retention and cash savings instead of as much growth. So kind of flip your lens a little bit. And those are things we're kind of doing. It's kind of hunkering down and going, we have great clients and team. Let's keep them happy. Let's serve them well. And let's really vet growth when it comes, because it's got to really be profitable as we move forward. So it's a different mindset to think about in a market of fear right now.
Yeah. So, Jason, we heard one of the tips that you give to your clients is to plan out things for an entire year. Tell me,
oh boy,
tell me that process.
Actually, before that,
okay.
I do have a question.
Okay,
just sort of building on what you do. You were talking about fear, and then you were talking about profitable growth, and I'm just curious about when you are talking with your clients and they come to you with that fear mindset. What do you do to maintain the relationship, or how do you respond to that?
Provide therapy.
Yeah, basically.
How do you therapize them
when you start seeing that affect their business or your business relationship with them?
Yeah, great question. And Jenno, you kind of did. This probably was not. We weren't recording yet, but you're like, "Hey, how's it going with you right now during this week?" Right? And so a lot of times you got to check in with that entrepreneur, and because you could roll into a coaching session or consulting and go, "Hey, let's work on revenue, team structures, and all that." But you have to stop and go, "Where are you right now?" We'll ask, can you focus with us right now? Is there a thing that's pressing you urgently in a way that'll distract you during our time together? You have to start to really draw them in and go, where do you feel unhealthy or healthy right now? How can we serve you in this moment to help you know everything's going to be okay? But is there a fear driving you to be distracted, even personal things, right? Because our coaching is confidential. So is there a personal issue that you're really struggling through? How can we help you work through that so that we can work on more entrepreneurial endeavors? So checking in with a human is super important. Their mental and emotional state. Those are things that service-based entrepreneurs don't really focus on as much, but this work draws a lot of our emotion and mental a lot of mental work out of us. So you got to check in on that. So we have to check in on the people a lot of times to make sure
That's smart.
They're being healthy people before they can run a healthy company, really.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, that's true for everybody. It doesn't matter what your industry in. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So I had, you win the award for earliest booking, I think, in relation to when you actually got on the show. And I had mentioned to Jennifer that you all have your calendar booked out like a year in advance. And I went to
I was like, whoa, I need that.
Sessions I went to. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating just how you all do it. So why do you do that?
Yeah. Wow. So there's a lot to that. So we employ a methodology we've called strategic calendar work blocking. And it's really a sense of, we know that one thing that makes a strong entrepreneur is to be strategic, which is to be intentional about your future. And so, and that's where a lot of entrepreneurs are very weak. What they want is the freedom. And a lot of them tell us, I'm addicted to freedom, or I love freedom. And really what that does is it gives them no ability to plan any kind of intentional success into the future. So our life got to a point, or specifically, my partner and I really started working on the chaos of my own role. That's one of the first things we worked on probably 10 years ago. And my life was completely chaotic, right? So I had complete white space on my calendar, which is we call white space non-intentional space. So it's not been pre-decided. And so my life was in chaos, right? I didn't know what to do every day. And for an entrepreneur with a couple businesses, there's so many things you can do. The choice in a moment of the priority of what you choose is typically going to be wrong because it's driven by an emotion, right? And just, for example, when you have a hard day, you're like, this sucks, I'm leaving, and you'll leave at 3 p.m. because you just want to escape the weight of what that day feels like. And if you do that for 10 years, you really wreck businesses. You run them down the toilet is what you do. And you feel broken, and I went through the depression, and you feel like you can't do anything right. And so my partner started teaching me a lot of structuring mechanisms about my own role and my day. And we started planning out blocks into the future. And then we turned it into a methodology where we actually use a containering system. So we'll go through a process of strategic planning every fall, and it'll produce about 8 to 10 to 12 what we call calendar containers. And those will be the 8 to 10 to 12 strategic initiatives I'm to commit to in my role. And so we'll block every square inch of our calendar with the containers. So you can look at our calendar and it's completely blocked all the way through the end of next year. And in the containers, you fill them up with what's supposed to go in that container. So you fill it up with meetings, and you'll layer meetings on top of the containers. And so we teach this to our community. A lot of our community now blocks the intentionality of their future. And there's a lot of skill to it, because a lot of people, and they're right, they say you can't block a calendar for a whole year in advance. And we know what they're saying. You can't predict what's going to happen to you, but there is a lot of prediction you can apply. You can pre-decide a lot of your successes. And then you have to be good at the accountability it takes to stay within the structure and then to move them. There's a lot of skill in moving, shrinking, growing blocks, which my partner and I do probably daily. Daily, we're adjusting our calendar as the reality of the day matches what we had pre-planned. And the reason that's so beneficial is because when a new meeting comes in and we don't have space for it, we get to make a very strategic yes and no decision, which is, are we ready to dismantle the block that's already been pre-planned like last year with this new meeting with a potential new client? Is the value of that meeting so high that will disrupt what we had already planned? And so our yeses and nos become so clear to us, and we're making very strategic decisions, decisions of a lot of priority. And it takes a lot of accountability to stay within structure like that. Entrepreneurs are not bent to stay in that. We fought about it. I said, you are hemming me in. You are keeping me from being who I'm meant to be. And she said, if you will trust me, I will give you everything you are looking for. And she was completely right.
Yeah.
She was, I do only what I'm meant to do in my highest level of value. And every day I kill it. I mean, I work.
Wow.
What a
the
feeling.
efficiency of my work. Yeah, it outpaces, and people can't work at the pace I work at. And it's my structure that does it. And they're just really scared of restricting themselves. And I'll just win then.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
I'm just going to win. I'm going to lean into it. So
I'm curious, like when you talk about these containers, I mean, that just, that speaks to me, that whole scheduling and the structure or I call it organizing chaos. Are the containers are like
what it is.
The labels of the blocks of like, okay, I'm going to plan out, this is going to be my blogging, like my content development. Is that what you're talking about? Containering?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So think like thematic containers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're thematic. That's a great way to look at it. Like, what should I be doing as a CEO? Like, I do 6 to 8 hours of content per week. And that's either for us, our organizations, or people hire us to produce a lot of content on their behalf too. And
that's why I'd heard
that's
of you.
got to go. Yeah, right. Because we're always pushing a lot of content, and we use the studio 98 Central, the one that you guys are in. They are our partner in producing a lot of that. So, way to go, 98C.
Shout out to 98.
That's right.
Yeah, shout out to them. So, we have to. I have to plan. Like, I can't. Like, we were hired by Fortune 500 company to say, build a 3-month course that all of our users of our software can go through because you're known in the profession. And that took a couple months of planning, 4 months of building the sessions, the curriculum, the homework, and then, a good week at the studio to shoot it. And so you can't throw that into a calendar. You have to plan. It has to be planned if you're going to produce something at such a high level of value. But that company hires us every year because they're like, we produce like clockwork, and it's always good content. And so, but it's not magic. People go, y'all are magic, and it's not magic. It's a lot of structure. People won't commit to. They won't. They just won't do it.
Yeah,
it's a lot of discipline, and I didn't have it. My partner taught it to me, and we fought a lot about it. So now I don't fight about it because we kill it.
You see it. You've seen it work.
Of that. I see it.
One thing I've noticed is that you keep saying you get to do things that most entrepreneurs are saying we have to do.
Yeah.
And so I'm really curious about that shift, when did that happen, or is that something that you do for yourself to remind that, hey, this structure is really an opportunity?
Yeah. It is freedom.
Yeah, it is freedom. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs come to us with such desire for freedom, which really for an entrepreneur can become very undisciplined and very dangerous, because it's what they're really saying is, I want to do what I want to do at my own whim. And that's the most hurtful thing they can have in their life. What I'm getting to do is really a pre-designed, what am I best at? What should I only focus on in my work? And what should I stop doing?
Right.
And so I would say, I don't want to do any of the financial work in our firm. It's not my favorite. There's other people that can do it better than me. There's other things I can do that other people can't do or shouldn't do. And I want to do that. I want to write. I want to speak. I want to do content. And she's like, okay, let's go start selling that, and let's increase our blocks over the next few years until that fills up. And so here we are. They were intentional decisions. I get to do only my highest level value of impact in the world. Wow. With entrepreneurs. I want to be with them, coach them, support them, care for them. And it takes immense structure on the inside that we share it, and a lot of people, they struggle with it. It's very scary for them. That kind of structure is very scary. So we teach an annual strategic planning conference to our community, our Thrival community. We're actually teaching it this Friday. It's an all-day event, and it's private for the community, and it walks them through this process of what annual strategic planning looks like, how it finds its way into calendar blocks, and how that feels, the fear entrepreneurs have with that kind of restriction, but it's actually their gateway and path to the thing they're really wanting, which is the ability to know, what do I do when I go to work? What do I do? And how do I do the best work I'm meant to do? That takes a lot of planning and a lot of structure.
Right.
It so happens. And I didn't know that early on.
That's just, I could just like imagine. I mean, I think that's what everybody's trying to get to.
That's right.
Entrepreneur or not, when you wake up and you're showing up at work, you're talking about being your best self and getting to do that all the time.
Yeah.
But I think also having those conversations with your team to discipline everybody to go, this is my role.
Yeah.
And so this is how I'm going to block this out based on the value that I bring, as CEO or as, director or manager of some division.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so that everybody is coming to the table with, this is how we're going to strategically use our time to meet our goals.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
It is.
All right,
and our team does that. They are required to block their calendars every week in advance. And some love it, some don't. It's a requirement. You have to do it. And so we work with them on how to make those choices.
Yeah.
And it's tough for us to do.
Yeah.
But I really like the idea too that, I mean, we've talked about in building the team, what are people's strengths and what are we looking for?
We talk about like the traits and all that stuff, but
and
this
people's
is a
talents
technique.
and their skills. But I love the idea of actually physically seeing, like, this is what Jenno does.
Right.
This is what she does best.
This
is what she's spending her time on. And this is what JJ does. This is what she does best.
And this is what this person does. And and that way you can see the thematic blocks or those containers to go, okay, I can't disturb her on Tuesday because she is working on these things that are very valuable. I shouldn't disrupt that.
Yeah.
Because that purpose.
Yeah. I love that.
I love that.
I didn't even think about that part. I was just thinking just get yourself together. That's
right. And so we find there's so much to it, right? So there's, when you put a human in a place to, like, we can notate the past, right? Like with timesheets, right? We can say, here's what I did with a timesheet. But when you ask a human to try to make some prediction of the future, which we only ask our team to do that a week at a time, the choices they make to put a block into a future is more of a priority choice. And it's a skill that you're not good at first, but when you calendar block the future, you get better at prioritization. And the skill of prioritizing is the skill where you win. That's the one where you say yeses and nos appropriately, because it's not easy to do. And so when you get that down and you really start to learn that skill, your life starts to take a different trajectory of success because you're spending the time to plan that future. And it's so few fight it. They really push away from it because it does feel fearful. But it actually is the door to freedom really for them.
But I love how that's been, because we've tried to coach our team like on the agency side, because everything we do is driven by hours. We sell time. And yes, you have to use the timesheets. That's the past. But I love the way you've framed the now I need you to schedule out, like you have as a full-time person, you have between 180 hours to 200 hours that you need to fill. What do you have? And then so we can also look at your capacity of this is what's on your plate. Now what capacity do we have to fill and how do we want to fill it? And it's very challenging to get people to think that way. It is not easy for people to think in that planning.
So hard.
But I've never thought of it in the way of
so hard.
Because they feel like that's such a challenge, or it's so many like I don't know how to do that, it's and so they run away from it. Or they expect other people to go, well, just tell me. And it's like, but I need you to go through that.
Yeah.
But the way that you framed it is freedom. It is, you get so much more control.
It's like, look, tell me what you're going to do so I can make sure you have the time. So we all give you the time and space to get it done your best.
Right. Yeah. And if you need
I'm sold.
Professional development to go, okay, I don't know, then we know you have those blocks to be able to manage that. I'm going to start using that language in our shop.
Yeah.
Because
I love this.
It is.
Oh, cool.
That's been, thank you.
Yeah.
That's been very helpful.
Well, it's a hard turn for team to make.
It is so hard.
Our team's always growing at it, and so we're always helping them grow at that work. But we find that practical calendar work is what actually makes their work successful. So a lot of times we don't have to focus necessarily on the creative production of their work. We're focusing on the planning of their time where they do their work. And you find out, how humans operate. That's, just a lot about humans, how they operate within blocks and how they expand them softly. And shrink them. And So you learn a lot about humans when you ask them to block a calendar. You're like, oh, cool. Wow, that's your perception of this week? That's not at all what my perception of your role was. So I'm glad we now see we're off the page, and that's very helpful.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. That you're seeing your team members in just like a whole new dimension, really.
Right.
That's right.
Like you just see this whole other part of them. That's so cool.
That's right.
Oh man.
Well, and they put their brain on a calendar, and we're like, no, that's not your role at all. I'm glad we know what you think it is, because that's not it. And so let us train you as to
that's right.
as to what that should be. You're going to shrink that one, expand Jennifer, that one, move that one here, and then they start to go.
I like this.
That's what I like this
a lot.
Like,
so Jason, do you go into these service-based businesses and help coach that? Because I could see where not only like the CEO or the leadership needs kind of some discipline of getting that, but then how do you train downstream to have those conversations to go?
Yeah.
Because I think that, I've had that challenge of my delivery is different than other management delivery.
Right.
And I don't want to step on management's toes to go, I see a disconnect. Are you going to address that disconnect?
Yeah.
How do we, how do we teach that?
Yeah. We do a lot of consulting and coaching with entrepreneurs, and a lot of times, and we have to be careful. A lot of times we'll say, this is how we do it. It doesn't necessarily mean it will translate perfectly to you. So like if somebody's trying to block a calendar in the future, won't do it for a year at a time. That took us 3 or 4 years to figure out. So don't start there.
So you're doing like 90 days.
Yeah, novice blockers really can do 90 days, or they can choose one recurrence of a block and recur that for a year, not the whole calendar. So there's a novice and an intermediate and advanced level of trying to block a calendar. So what we'll do with an entrepreneur is go, where are you struggling? What do you think we can help you do? And it might be blocking, but it might be, building leadership teams in a way that allow the owner to leverage the growth of a larger team. And how do you teach the leaders to lead other people? And blocking may be part of that. That might be so granular. We might say we can't even get into that. That'll just make everybody mad. So let's deal with some other hot button issues before we deal with that. So totally depends on what the entrepreneur thinks. And then we do a lot of assessment and discovery and diagnostic work up front.
Okay.
Because creative entrepreneurs are notorious for not knowing what their problem is. So they bring presenting issues, not root issues, but that's a human issue, right? So you go, what's wrong? Whatever they say is the weight of the presenting issue. It's typically a root problem. We have to help them come to understand. So there's a phase of diagnostics and counseling and intake up front. And then going, okay, is your team is unclear about their roles? Let's build an accountability chart with job descriptions. That will start to cull out a lot of the root problems that's creating this chaos. And so it just takes a lot of diagnostics and assessment up front to know.
Oh,
cool.
That's fascinating.
All right. So we're going to rename this Goodbye Chaos, because we've got.
That's it.
I can feel people right now. Jason, we are unfortunately out of time, but I can feel people being like, how do I meet this person and get in their world and tame the chaos?
Jason, how do people get connected with you? What is the best way?
Well, you can go to jasonblumer.com. So that's one way. That'll filter you out to our Blumer CPAs or thrival.com. We have pretty long, substantial ebooks in both companies, and we have CPAs and agency owners getting both books. One's on pricing and positioning, one's on growth. So, there's books, there's blogs. I do, tons of webinars, and of course we have events that we run. Blumer CPAs, you'll find the Fusion Agency Summit. There's a summit we run for high-level agency owners every year. So that'll
is that
be
what this
year.
Friday is, or no? That's a different.
No, that's a Thrival thing. Which,
okay.
Yeah, that's a Future Firm Summit, and we have so many summits and programs and curriculum.
But you know when they're coming, and you're ready, and it's all planned.
Well, we did. Yeah. They're all booked. Our team still goes, "What's a master class again? Is that for who?" And so we have
so go to
many different
jasonblumer.com.
BLUMER.
BLUMER.
There you go. There's our mug. JJ, you have our mug.
I know.
We're fans. I mean, I'm an even bigger fan now after today. And
we'll be talking, Jason.
For our listeners who want to find more words of wisdom from founders like Jason and all the other great people we have.
You can check out Hello Chaos, the podcast. We are available on all podcasts everywhere, or you can go to hellochaospodcast.com or Orange Whip, and that's orangewip.com, and check us out.
Yeah.
Subscribe, like, comment. We love it.
Yes.
and we love everything you've shared today. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank y'all for
really
having
great
me.
words
Thank you
of
so
wisdom.
much.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.